So in this video, we're going to talk about protein. There is so many confusions about protein, and also should I have this amount or that amount, or should I be a vegetarian? So I'm going to clear up some common misconceptions about protein. One of the principles behind any diet is you want to trigger fat burning, right? You want to lose weight. If we look at the viewpoint of what hormones trigger fat burning and what foods trigger those hormones, protein comes up very at the top of the list. So protein does trigger the fat burning hormones, okay? But you have to understand what is a protein, because in nature, very few things come in pure proteins. They're always a combination of proteins, carbohydrates, and fats. And if you're basing your diet on a calorie counting model, which by the way is incorrect, you're going to be looking more at the fat calories and avoiding those since they have the most calories. You're not going to be looking at the protein part of this. Okay, so that's a misconception, and your entire diet is going to be wrong. Or if you're looking at maybe the Atkins diet and you're only focused on protein and realize there's 6 other types of foods that trigger fat burning process, but they're focused just on the protein, then you're going to ignore some of the other pieces of the puzzle, especially as it relates to the liver function, because the more the liver is damaged, the more the liver is dysfunctional. The older you get, the less the liver can function, the less protein you can digest. So if you start increasing too much protein, it's going to throw off something else. And also, if the liver is not good, you're not going to be able to have the thyroid work, because the thyroid works through the liver as well. So anyway, let's just talk about protein and some of the misconceptions. You have people that say, well, I'm eating protein, I'm eating nuts. Okay, well, let's take a look. Nuts only have 15% protein. That's not a lot. So you're not going to be triggering a lot of fat burning with nuts. And then it has 13% carbohydrates, so that's fairly low. And those carbohydrates aren't necessarily high sugar carbohydrates. They don't turn into sugar very fast unless you have maybe cashews. But for the most part, they don't turn into sugar very fast. But they are high in fat. But now, when we're looking at the triggering the fat burning process, fat is neutral. So in other words, we don't necessarily have to worry about fats if you want to burn fat through the hormone system. But we do have to worry about fats in relationship to what it does to the liver. So too much fat can irritate and clog up the liver, and that's why a lot of times when you eat nuts high in fat, it irritates the gallbladder. So the way we counter that is we increase the greens, the vegetables, to keep the liver healthy. So as long as you're having enough greens in the diet, about 6 to 7 cups a day, you can pretty much get away with fat, and that includes even bacon and things like that. So that's how we counter it. But if you are only eating fat and protein, that can aggravate the liver. So what we want to do is we want to keep the carbs relatively on the low side, but I'm not talking about all carbs. I'm talking about the ones that turn into sugar fast. So even though vegetables are almost all carbohydrate, they're very high in fiber and they're very low in sugar, and they don't turn into fat. They're insoluble fibers, so they don't really turn into sugar. On the other hand, grains are very high in carbs, but they're different than vegetable because they turn into sugar very, very fast. Okay, so we want a food that has a bit higher amounts of protein, a bit low carb, or carbs that don't break it down into sugar very easily. And we really don't care about the fats because we're going to keep our vegetable content very high to flush things out of the liver. All right? So this whole conception of high calorie, high fat, turning into fat, just take that and just put it over here, because that really doesn't affect insulin, which is the thing that really makes you get fat. So, and I know people it's in their mind, they're like, oh my gosh, I have to avoid all fat. Well, how does that work for you? Does it work? I mean, try it. You cut your fats out, it never really turns into weight loss. It's the carbs, okay? So we also have another factor here called nutrients, because what we want to do is we want something high in nutrients. So let's just take oatmeal, for example. Oatmeal for breakfast is like eating cardboard. It's very low in nutrients. Yes, it has some factors that help lower cholesterol a little bit, but as far as nutrients, it's low, all right? Same thing with hummus. Hummus is a great food, but it's very low in nutrients, okay? So if you're trying to eat foods that increase the health, if you have oatmeal or hummus, don't be surprised if they're like a neutral food. They might not hurt you, but they might not help you. Again, like eating cardboard. It's not going to kill you, but it's not going to help you. So nuts. Okay, so nuts do have some good amount of nutrients, okay? So we have that. Now beans have 23% protein, a bit more than nuts, but look at the carb, 72% versus 13%. So this is going to get you right here, those carbs. Now, I'm not against beans, and look at how low they are in fat, but they do have a bit too many carbs if you're trying to lose weight. Now, there's layers to this problem. So it's not just as simple as calories in equals calories out, or high protein or low fat. There's different layers of complexities, and I'm trying to make it simple, but one layer is this. Beans are cooked, so you actually destroy enzymes, and then you destroy nutrition, so you're eating kind of a dead product. And also, even though they have higher protein than nuts, they're very, very low in fat, and also most vegetarian programs say, or low-fat diets say, oh yeah, beans are great because they're such low in fat and low in calorie, and you're just going to burn off these calories. But a lot of these carbohydrates, especially refined beans, well, that'll turn into sugar pretty fast. And black beans, it's not going to help your weight loss. So we have this food, and then we have your body interaction with it hormonally. If your metabolism is low, and that's another variable, if you consume some of these foods too high in carb, it's going to create an effect on your metabolism. In fact, it's going to slow you way down. If your metabolism is high, you can get away with all these carbs, and most people, especially if they reach the age of 40 or 50, you're not going to be able to get away with these higher carbohydrate foods. So even though you might walk it off in a mile, the insulin response, the sugar response, could last far more than that mile. It could last 2, 3, 4 days, okay? So what you have to know is just a little bit of the wrong thing can nullify a lot of good things. All right, so hope I'm not confusing you too much here. I probably am, but let's just kind of go through this. So nuts, high in fat, but that's okay if we keep our vegetables high because it's high in nutrients. Beans, most of them are obviously cooked. You're not going to eat raw beans. And so the nutrition is not as high with beans, but it's kind of a neutral food if your metabolism is good. If you're trying to lose weight, you're going to find beans might not help you lose weight. And then we have hummus. Again, look at 11% protein, 45% carbs, 44% fat. Okay, all right, not too bad. It's not going to turn into sugar that bad because there's a certain amount of fiber. But it's like a neutral food because the nutrition is not very high. So it'll be something to snack on, something to keep you going, but it's not necessarily going to help you burn fat, but it's not necessarily going to cause you to gain weight either. So this is a neutral food. Now let's talk about yogurt and cheese. Now yogurt has 36% protein. That's not bad. That's a good amount of protein. And then also cheese has a little higher protein, but it also, depending on what type of cheese that you consume, because the more aged it is, the higher protein content and the less carbohydrate, because those enzymes or those bacteria in the cheese that make these fermented products like yogurt, kefir, and cheese especially, tend to eat up some of the lactose, the milk sugar in there, reducing the sugar. So now we have all these beneficial bacteria, we got great protein, and we have some fat as well, especially if it's low-fat cheese. But we're not concerned about the fat because we're adding our vegetables very, very high. So yogurt might help us, but look at it, it does have 29% sugar. I'm sorry, carbohydrate. So that is a bit high. So if you're trying to lose weight, you may find that yogurt might slow you down a little bit, but it depends on your metabolism. Okay, if your metabolism is slow, you might have to eliminate all these high carb things. Definitely beans, definitely hummus, and definitely yogurt. You could probably get by with cheese though, because cheese is not very high in carb. Okay, but yogurt and kefir is. But nuts would be okay because look at how low that would be, 13%. Now let's get into the grains. Grains have 15% protein. That is like very, very low. And look at how much carb. It's 75% carb. But the catch-22 with this carb, this is not like vegetable. This is like turning in the sugar very, very fast. So grains are very, very bad for weight loss, yet look at how low they are in fats. So all these low-fat diet so-called gurus will say it's okay to consume grains because it's such a low in fat and have complex carbohydrates and have whole grain, not refined grain or white bread. Well, it doesn't matter. Whole grain still turns into sugar faster than sugar. Some of these sugars affect your blood sugars. And there's a great book that you can, Wheat Belly, that talks about how whole grain is very, very bad advice. So when you're consuming a diet, a balanced diet, the food pyramid diet, and you have a fat situation, stubborn belly fat or whatever, you can't do a balanced diet. You can't do those little protein bars that have, you know, balanced proteins, carbohydrates, and fats. Why? Because your body's out of balance. So you really have to force your body to burn fat by reducing these carbs as far down to zero as possible. Okay, especially the ones that turn into sugar. So grains will just block any chance of losing weight, and that also includes some fruit as well. So we want to keep fruit down as well. So we have grains and we have low fat, but it's so funny how people say, well, you can have all these great foods, but just add grains. Well, that's enough to block any chance of losing weight. And plus, there's very low amounts of nutrition in grains. Now, yogurt, there's some great calcium, so that's a little bit higher. Okay, but grains are low, grains are out. Okay, fish, look at this, 93% protein. Oh my goodness, that is a very good fat burner. And look at how many carbohydrates, 0. Huge ability to burn fat. But again, the principle, there's layers of complexity. You have also too much protein. So you wouldn't want to necessarily live on protein or have like 12 ounces per meal because that can also bog down the liver. All the fat-burning hormones that come through the body go through the liver. So we need to keep that liver opened up and healthy. And then if we're burning fat, we better consume a lot of vegetables because if you don't, all the fat that you are burning ends up in the liver and it gets stuck in the liver and you end up with a fatty liver. That's why a lot of the Atkins diet people or the high-protein diet people end up with a fatty liver. And that's why their breath is kind of toxic. And so we want to understand the whole picture. So fish, look at this, 7% fat. I mean, that's a low stress on your liver. And people always say, what's the best proteins for the body? Well, what would be the best protein to lessen the stress on your liver? Fish would be great. Seafood would be even better. So those are very low liver stress proteins. Now, animal protein, 59% protein. That's pretty high. But look at 0% carb. So animal protein will also help you burn fat, but look at how much higher it is in fat. So again, if you're going to do animal protein, you better enhance the vegetables to clean out that fat. But you know what you could probably get away with if you were to consume just fish, because this is low in protein, fat, you pretty much can get away with eating mostly fish if there's small amounts of fish through the day, because it's not going to put stress on your liver or your pancreas. It'll put you in some hardcore fat burning. And then there's different types of fish too, like halibut is higher in fat. This is cod. Cod is low in fat, but of course it's you have to make it taste good. All right, so now we have kale, 16% protein. Wow, that's actually more than nuts. It's more than hummus. and it's more than grains. Wow, there's protein in kale. What do you know? But look at how high it is in carbohydrate, 72%. But none of this just turns into sugar very fast. So it's low glycemic, it's high in fiber, and it's insoluble fibers. So your digestion's going to not break that down into direct sugar. So it takes a lot of energy to break that down. So you're going to, it's kind of like you're going to burn more fat just breaking this stuff down. And then, of course, 15% fat. But these are healthy fats. These are omega-3 fats, omega-6 fats. So it's pretty low in fat. And so it is, you can see, it's screaming high with nutrients. So we have the perfect food right here, kale. All right? Now, look at eggs, 29% protein. You would think that would be higher in protein, but it's not very high in protein, but it's not very low in protein. Very low in carb, though. So eggs also are going to help you lose weight, because look at that, carb is only 2%, and we have a lot of nutrition as well, but it's very high in fat. So eggs are fine, but they could stress the liver a little bit if you're not having enough vegetable. All right? So I hope I clarified some of the confusions about protein. You might want to watch this several times, take some notes. So apply the information, and we will see you in the next video.